First time we've spoken today, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you and I talk constantly. We're either texting or talking on the phone. I mean, there's just so much going on.
Yeah.
Part of it is us theorizing, speculating. Another part of it is, we just enjoy reading this stuff. We enjoy kind of educating ourselves and educating other people on it because
Yeah.
it's thick stuff, right?
Yeah. And what lawyer doesn't like to work for free?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Uh,
so go ahead, Richard.
Go for it. So part of this also, I should put out the disclaimer. This is not legal advice, which is the name of the channel. Obviously, we're both attorneys, but we're not securities attorneys. We're both not New York attorneys, as far as I know. And we're offering our observations and analysis based upon people we speak with, documents we review, and our own
Right.
speculation, kind of in part. And
Right.
and obviously, we intended to do this on a regular basis. If people are interested, we intended to do this on a regular basis. Today seemed like a good idea, so we're going for it. But don't take what we say as anything other than, as the name of this episode is, utter nonsense. Episode 2.
Right.
Um, so so why don't you go ahead? You were going to talk
So yeah,
about.
and just to caveat that this is now the second. I seem to be getting less and less time to prepare from Richard. so yeah, like Richard said, it's just the two of us talking. Very similar to what we do on Spaces, but it's obviously more of an intimate conversation. Definitely not legal advice. We're here to educate. Hopefully, make some people feel better about kind of where things are at, and take it from there. So, Richard, you had initially reached out to me. You had several topics you wanted to talk about. Obviously, Mark's petition is the big one. You
Yeah.
and I were both on space calls today, and heard a lot about how people are feeling about NextBridge. There's a lot going on now with Goldman Sachs. We had the Sabi investigation yesterday. We're kind of only doing this for an hour, so we've got a lot to cover. So, where do you want to start? Mark's petition?
Yeah, well, we start with Mark's petition, and obviously, we're not New York lawyers,
Right.
and we're not here to dissect or criticize anything that Mark did. As to the contrary,
Right.
I'm thankful. I'm thankful for what he did. I'm thankful for the amount of time he's put in. I know he's
Right.
not doing it for a fee, so I really respect the fact that he's doing that, and that's where we start off.
Right.
And obviously, just so everybody knows, JR and I have been talking about this for a long time. So
Yes.
we had speculated about all kinds of conclusions because this is basically a case of first impression, and
Mm-hmm.
and a judge could rule however. And I've been in
Right.
front of enough judges to know that I can't necessarily predict how the judge is going to rule, and sometimes the judges rule incorrectly. And I'm
Right.
sure in this case, Mark, that's how Mark would feel, and
Yeah.
that's how pretty much every losing attorney feels, because that's the way it is. And
Right.
this is not, it's not so objective that it's black and white. There's a lot of
Right.
subjectivity in this, and so I wasn't shocked by the outcome.
Right.
And the way I see it, it does open the door. Notwithstanding, however, his appeal, uh, how it works out, I hope it is successful.
Right.
But notwithstanding that, he's kind of laid the groundwork for people in the future, because
Right.
now they've got a preview from the judge what
Yep.
she or he is looking for. And to the extent additional people want to file petitions, they kind of
Right.
have a roadmap. And to the extent that amended petitions, maybe there are going to be amended petitions filed.
Right.
Now we
Right.
kind of have like a way or a path to proceed. So,
Right.
you know, it obviously wasn't the best result, but it wasn't surprising to you or I. And I don't think it's determinative of the outcome. As
Right.
I was speaking to William Ferrand earlier, and kind of the way I described it to him was, this was a procedural decision.
Right.
It was not a substantive decision on the underlying claim.
That's right.
So, and unfortunately, a lot of legal results are procedural, not substantive.
Right.
So just because this judge ruled in a particular way, she's not indicating that on the merits of the big claim that we don't have a valid claim. So
Right.
people should not be taken or fooled or drifted in that direction.
Right.
What was your opinion?
Well, I will tell you, and maybe this was just me being overconfident, but I was about 95% certain that the judge was going to rule and provide the broker dealer names. I say I was landing anywhere between 60 and 70% that the data would be granted, but I was shocked when the broker dealer names weren't provided, and I was shocked because as I listened to the judge ask the questions, I grew more comfortable. I think as I was listening, I was growing more comfortable thinking about her being comfortable, just trying to get over that next hurdle. So when the entire thing was dismissed, that kind of surprised me, because again, I mean, you and I talked. I was pretty
Yeah,
certain they were getting the broker dealer names. But we've talked about this, and I've talked about it, and you've talked about it, and Mark has talked about it. These were legal arguments. They were not factual arguments. It was a pre-discovery petition. It was not a complaint. The legal standards are entirely different, and it was coming down to a legal argument. I was surprised, and I had to cut out early, so if I'm wrong, I apologize, but not one question from the judge on the investigatory privilege. I initially thought that was where the crux of the oral arguments were going to be, and I was wrong. So, the other thing that you and I have talked about, this is just step one in the journey, and Mark has already tweeted out, "We're going up." I think he hashtagged it, and that was to be
right.
expected. And the other thing that you and I talked about quite frequently was, even if Mark did win, they were not getting the blue sheets today or tomorrow. There was going to be, again, pure speculation on my part, but I would have been dumbfounded if this didn't happen. They would have filed for a stay pending the appeal. So, I said it earlier. It's unfortunate we couldn't kind of have a kumbaya moment altogether with this, but it's not it's not devastating. It was
Right.
somewhat to be expected. I mean, I'm sure Mark was thinking in his mind, "What's my next step if I lose? What's my next step if I win?" Because that's what good litigators do.
Right.
So yeah. So those are my thoughts on it.
Yeah, and we knew this is the long run, right? We know this is a battle, and it's just like just got to keep on chugging along. And I'm sure Mark's going to do the same.
Oh
And
yeah,
I think for the judge, by the way, this was probably a case of first impression for her,
it
and
absolutely
and
was.
and she might change her opinion down the road when presented with different facts. So, and
Sure.
I'm sure going to encourage others to take a crack at it too, which I think is going to bother FINRA because they know, because again, I think the judge did give somewhat of a roadmap how someone could
Exactly.
proceed in the future, and I think
Exactly.
FINRA knows that too. So again, we look at it differently. We didn't see it as an all. I don't think Mark saw it that way either.
No.
Although I'm not speaking for him, but
Right.
we didn't see it as like an all or nothing, or that it was we win or lose. We kind
Right.
of and we talk about this too because people that maybe don't have the background in law might give more um, they might think more of something than it really is, and they might
Right.
give more power and weight than it really deserves.
Right.
So I know when we talk about it, we are much more moderate in our views, plus or minus. And I'm sure Mark's the same way. Nobody likes the outcome, but it's just one step in the process, and we're moving on. I know
Yeah.
everybody, at least my impression is there's a lot of people that are not particularly pleased, and we know that.
Yeah.
And which takes us to point number two. I know there's a lot of discussion today about Nextbridge, and
Yeah.
and you and I have talked about it, so it's not like it's a surprise long before today.
Right. Right.
And I have been in communication with people who've provided me information, let's just say. So
Okay.
I would expect, and I know people are asking and wondering why Nextbridge hasn't taken certain actions or whatever. And I'm sure there is good logic to that. I really do believe there's good logic to that.
Right.
But my understanding is that within the next 2 days, so by Monday, there will be some kind of material news with
Okay.
regard to NextBridge. And I think everybody will know when the news, and I'm not saying this is a resolution or the end.
Right.
I'm
Right.
just going to say this is material information. And when the information comes out, everybody will understand what I'm talking about. So it won't be like won't be disguised. It'll be very easy to discern.
Good.
And my
That's good to hear.
understanding is that after that, there may be further actions that are taken, and that next bridge in the future may take a different approach than they did in the past. And I know there's been a lot of inquiry about that, so I know people are interested in that, and that's my my sources. I think are legitimate, credible, and certainly with the same intent as all of us. So
Right.
I feel comfortable. Does that mean that everything I say, or what I just said, not everything, but what I just said is going to happen? I can't guarantee that, but my expectation is that something will happen by the end of Monday, and that'll be obvious.
Well,
So I think
that's good
that is,
news.
yeah, I think that's good news because I know that, me included, there are a lot of people that were getting quite anxious
Yeah.
For activity or support or whatever,
Right.
and so I think it's a good positive step forward.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. Well, anytime there's a setback, the emotions will ebb and flow, and I'm the same way. The community is the same way. There's a lot of people that that it happens to on a regular basis. So to hear that's good. And you and I have often speculated kind of why they've been silent, and we both still we were coming to the same conclusion that, look, one wrong misstep and they could find themselves in some type of legal peril.
Yeah,
But the other more important thing that you and I have always talked about was, well, they're an oil company. They're an oil exploration company. Don't we want them to be focused on finding the oil and developing the property? I mean, who who wouldn't be excited if an announcement came out about 14 billion gallons in the ground? I'll take that any day of the week over a press release saying, "Hey, community, be patient. We're actively working on things."
right.
It is a double edged sword, and I get it. People were super anxious, but that's great. That's awesome news, Richard. That's
Yeah,
thanks
because
for sharing that.
I know it. Hopefully, it will make people feel better and will feel less anxious. And I know, again, because I hear it, and and justifiably, 6 months plus post, and
Yeah.
not the nonsense is continuing. By the way, I forgot. It's very important. I can't go on without doing one of my great jokes. So uh, I had a taser once. It was stunning.
I have a joke for someone in the audience. I'm sure they know who it is.
Go
So
for it. Go for it.
that was my joke. That was my
Oh,
joke.
okay. All right. Okay. Um, so I think with the activity, it'll make people feel better, and I hope it will be. I
Yeah.
think the design is beyond just making feel better because that was nice, but not that productive. I think the design is to be influential in getting us to a resolution,
Good.
and I
And
and I feel comfortable about that. That's their intention.
good. That's great news. I'm hoping there's a lot of people watching and hearing that, because that's going to go a long way in lifting spirits and lifting emotions. Again, I personally was hoping to have that kumbaya moment, celebrating with Mark on a space call.
Right.
Obviously, it wasn't meant to be, but that's not detrimental or super devastating, or it's not the brick wall that everyone thinks it is. At least you and I don't believe so. And to hear that, Nextbridge is going to be coming out with some news in the next 24 to 48 hours, and things are going to be moving is great. So
Yeah. And we know there's other, besides that, we know there's other activities still going on. There's obviously legal maneuvers. I'm sure there's other maneuvers that I don't know about by
right.
other people. So, it's a battle. It's not the war. It's not fun, but we just kick it forward and go
Right.
forward. So that's,
Right.
that's what I
We
want to.
keep doing what we've been doing for the last 6 months, keeping positive. If you feel it's time to get off the space, get off the space. You and I have both talked about how we sometimes check out and then we check right back in, completely recharged.
Right.
And if you need to do that, that's okay. The movement is not going anywhere. We know that. We are
Yeah.
chugging along. I talked to Andrew for a hot second last night, and he's as supercharged as ever. I mean, everybody is. That's what we need to be. It is what it is. We plow forward.
Yeah.
So
we always, at least we knew, and and I know it's hard for somebody who doesn't act in legal time, but we expected it to be a slog,
Oh
not
yeah,
easy and
yeah.
long, and it's not surprised us in any respect.
No,
And again, to the extent that FINRA or whoever has acted in a particular way in the past, you shouldn't expect them to act any differently in the future. So
exactly,
just gotta
exactly.
punching away. So
Yeah, I mean, look, this is an organization that has never been transparent since inception. Its predecessors were never transparent since their inception. Why would we expect them to be transparent now? So, and I talked about this yesterday, or maybe this morning. I don't even remember when I talked about it. Kind of the legal chipping away. The legal chipping away. You look at the laws surrounding African Americans in the back of the bus. We get rid of that one. The laws separate but equal bathrooms. You get rid of that one. The process is the same. The pre-discovery petition requesting or petitioning the court for the blue sheets. It's a small little chunk in this much larger picture, but it's a process, and that process is going to take some time. So,
yeah,
and we're only at step one.
right. And obviously, in whatever request discovery too. So there's other avenues to obtain discovery.
Mm-hmm.
I would assume as time goes on, there'll be more, not less.
Right.
Because if you're this time, if you're around 6 months in, you're going. At some point in time, they'll know that, and they'll have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Um, along those lines, I think in part what, and I this not just speculating, but I can't go into more detail. At some point in time, I'm hoping that um, other regulators perhaps might intercede and be the solution.
Right.
So I'm
Right.
not, and I don't want to go into more detail than that,
Got
but
it.
I'm hoping that's what occurs, because that might be, that really would be a solution if the government solved the problem. That's the solution.
Right. Well,
It's just that
go ahead.
we can't get them to act in a manner that appears to be in the interest of retail investors. If
Right.
that changes, they could solve it in 25 minutes.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, most of these problems could be solved in 25 minutes with a multitude of easy solutions. I mean, these are simple regulatory changes. I was talking to someone today. His name will go. I won't share who his name is, but we had maybe 15, 20-minute conversation on the Madoff exemption. And it's ludicrous to think that this rule is still referred to as the Madoff exception. And it's like calling a tax deduction the Capone deduction. I mean, it's ridiculous that our regulators continue to allow bad behavior that was pushed by a criminal. So there's quite a few easy fixes that could be done to clean up a lot of what's going on, and yet our regulators fail to act. And why they fail to
Yeah.
act, I don't know. Maybe they're just downright lazy. Are they, somehow just that stupid that they're blind and don't see what's going on? Or, are there other things that are happening? So yeah,
Yeah.
and going back to the some other agency coming in, we talked yesterday about we focus on three or four different things: the legal avenue, the pressure avenue, the sale of the assets avenue. But it could be anything. It could be some unknown avenue that no one has discussed, no one has thought about, talked about, that solves the problem that we're in, and the larger problem with our markets in terms of how retail is looked at.
Yeah, it's very with
Yep.
people that are, and
Hmm.
we may have no idea, and it may come out of the blue,
Yeah.
because obviously that everybody's aware of it. If I listen to enough YouTube and Spaces
Hmm.
and see enough Twitter. There's a ton of people are aware of it. This is not like 10 years ago where this was in the closet.
Yeah.
People are aware of it. Or so so the agencies are aware of it too. And kind of like I was going to say is, and I don't know if this is good or bad, but it's kind of like I think it's related. So I read today that the SEC was investigating Goldman Sachs on
Yeah.
their handling of Silver Valley Bank. Excuse me, Silicon. bank.
Right.
And the concern was handling the purchase. They were advising, they made fees, and they may have advised them to go belly up, whatever. And there may have been, maybe. I did a video. It's ironic because about 3 months ago, whenever this happened, I did a video because I thought some of those things had occurred. And I
Right.
did, I mean, I'm just talking. So I don't
Right.
know if Goldman has any responsibility, whatever. But I thought there were a lot of issues that arose that should be investigated. So he is legitimately investigating for real reasons, then I'm all for it. If the SEC is investigating because they want to cover their butt, great investigations from happening, then I'm not for it.
Yeah.
So I don't know which one it is, and I don't know what the result is,
Yeah.
because I know that in that I remember a lot of the management, and they were able to sell their shares about 20 days before the dump,
Right.
and but because they were scheduled, but it creates, and so even if they knew, apparently this was kind of the, even if they knew that the company was going down the tubes in 20 days and the stock price would fall, within that plan, they were entitled to sell it. And I
Yeah.
thought that's ludicrous.
It is.
And we hope, obviously, we hope the SEC makes changes. There's discussion about that there has to be a good faith requirement at all times. So even if you have a plan, like that would be a perfect example. You have a plan that's going to sell stock at X plus 100, but you know the price of the stock is going to go down to X, then
Yeah.
under a, wouldn't be able to sell the stock even if you had a plan. And I
Yeah.
think that's fair, and it probably prevents a lot of corruption, insider trading, and stuff that we don't want in the market. Again, fair, and we want fair markets.
Yeah.
The other thing that, and any comment?
Well, I was just going to say it's very similar to the golden parachutes that some of these guys get when their company's, about to go belly up and they leave and, they walk away with 15 million or 20 million or whatever the hell it is. And they walk away and 6 months later, the company's belly up in bankruptcy and they're restructuring and getting rid of all their legitimate debt. It's
Right.
almost like some of these loopholes are just over analyzed by attorneys for nothing more than to benefit their CEO or their corporate board or whatever. But I often think, and maybe this is just you and I, but I never thought about looking at the law in terms to benefit someone financially. How do you use and manipulate the law and use all these little rinky-dink loopholes to cut 20 million out of corporate tax, or make sure your CEO is walking away with a $15 million package in retiree life insurance for the rest of his life while the company's burning down and 20,000 people are losing their jobs. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. It really is.
Yeah. It's at least unethical, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
illegal or not, but it's certainly unethical and
Yeah.
unfair to everyone.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say is we heard yesterday that Sabi, the naked shorting
Yep.
prosecution or indictment, which I guess came out, and I think they were investigating, there were like 50 cases or something. They dismissed 49 because there were areas in the
Yeah.
investigation or other they stuck on these guys. And maybe, listen, maybe MMT or MMTLP is one of their holdings,
Yeah.
but I don't think that the amount in dispute is anywhere near MMTLP, for example, if
Yeah.
based upon what was lost. So I wonder, in those cases, you wonder again, what's the purpose? Are they just doing it, say, well, we went after naked shorts, so what are you talking about? Or is it legitimate? Is it legitimate, legitimate case?
Yeah.
It concerned me had to dump the other cases because of irregularities, but if they're going to pursue naked shorting, then we're all for it, right?
Right. I think it's not for me personally. When I saw that, the timing was very suspicious, and I hate to get all cloak and dagger and conspiratorial, but this has been going on for many years. The retail investment community has figured it out. Now all of a sudden, you've got large swaths of retail investors that are congregating on Twitter, talking about this stuff, educating other people. We're seeing kind of this ebb up with these Twitter spaces, and now all of a sudden we're going to drop news on naked shorting. But oh, by the way, some of these claims had deficiencies. My favorite part of this SEC charge with naked shorts is, they talk about, what was it, $2 million in illegal profits, but not once did they talk about the tickers or the companies that these individuals were naked shorting.
Right.
Now, those $2 million profits came out of either retail or other legitimate institutional investors. Where's the harm was to those people and the organizations. So you're going to charge these people, but the retail investment community or the institutions that legitimately lost money, well, sorry about your luck. You bought a naked short, which, by the way, we told you didn't exist for the last 10 years. Oh, and so did the Wall Street Journal and every other major news outlet across the globe. But yeah, we found them. Here they are.
Yeah.
So I tend to be a very jaded on some of this stuff that is coming out now as it relates to naked short selling, fails to deliver. The SEC just has no credibility right now, and neither does Gary Gensler.
Right. It would be interesting to see if of people that had accounts with that company could file that petition that Mark filed, and
Yeah,
because there's no way of knowing
that's a
if you
good idea.
are. Uh,
That's an excellent idea.
yeah,
I would make the argument that they absolutely could. How
right.
could the judge deny it at this point? The SEC just charged these organizations. The SEC is not going to go out and collect money for the retail investment
No,
community or anyone that lost money. What about the legitimate board members that were purchasing their own stock and this is happening to? They've lost millions of dollars as well too. So
right.
it's just, I hate to use the phrase, but it's utter nonsense that they're going to charge these individuals, charge these institutions, but yet not back up and say, okay, X, Y, and Z, lost, $30,000 when he purchased it at 14 cents, and it's now at 3 cents, and we're going to make that person whole, or these guys are going to make that person whole, and that's what should happen.
And we have no idea whether at any point in time the SEC will release those names, right? If they end up resolving their dispute with the defendant, I'm sure part of it is we'll never know who those
Well,
10
Well,
that
any company right now that thinks they've been naked shorted should be filing that petition in New York right now. I mean, I think they have a legitimate claim.
yeah.
The SEC hasn't come out and said which companies were hammered. So, any company that suspects of naked shorting should be on there, I think. I'm getting texts.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's all suspicious. I hate to say that, but it just is. It's all
Yeah.
suspicious.
Yeah, I don't like to be a conspiracy. I really am not a conspiracy guy. I'm not.
No, I'm not
But
either.
like sequence of events, timing,
Hmm.
sometimes it's, I'm sure, coincidence, but sometimes it's not.
We'll go back to last, when all the Wall Street Journal article dropped, the Forbes article dropped, and it was all timed. It was all right before Mark's brief dropped, and there was a reason why that was, and we all know what the reason is. And the author of one of those articles basically said naked shorts don't exist, and then less than a week later, here they are charging with naked short sales.
Yeah.
So it's
And
just crap.
and judges are people too. I know some people don't believe that, just like lawyers do. But lawyers are people too most of the time. Although so we don't know, like, we read a lot of stuff, right? We just generally, stuff comes across our desk that interests us or that has keywords. It's got to be like everybody else. So if somebody
Mhm.
puts a story out in a quote unquote reputable publication, a lot of people are going to read it, and a lot of people may be influenced because this subject matter is certainly not easy and requires, at least in my mind, it requires a lot of repetition to understand the fact pattern really and to kind of get a feeling for what went on. And to
Right.
most people, if you give them like the 10-minute version, they think you're out of your mind just because,
Yeah.
sounds, because, most times, listen, I'm guilty of it too. So I'm skeptical of everybody telling the story because I know whatever they're telling me is not 100%. There's
Yeah.
something in between. So I'm skeptical. But, at some point in time, when things are proven, things are proven. And, again, the bottom line is we're kind of back to MMTLP. I think that's the name of the ticker.
I think
Um,
that's what it is. I'm not quite sure.
yeah, yeah. Nobody has ever claimed that anybody got what they were supposed to. That's
Right.
never been claimed. Nobody's
Right.
ever claimed that everything is done, or we know
Right.
to the contrary. Like, I've seen Fidelity document that said, I think March of 2023, that said, it's ongoing, open, and I'm in arbitration with Fidelity. That's why I was interested in that document.
Right.
But
Right.
nobody's claimed to the contrary. It's
Right.
all trying to run and hide, avoid liability. That's the way it's
Right.
been handled, and that serves nobody's interest other than
Right.
Finn keeping their position, their contract. And we've had a discussion about that too,
Yeah.
whether Congress has the authority to terminate FINRA's contract or status based upon misconduct or just a failure to do their job. We don't know, but we
Yeah. We
talked
don't.
about we talked about that. I have to believe that um, they they don't have like a indefinite lifetime contract and that they could act. But sometimes if somebody had to prove that, yes. So let me take a step back.
Right.
SEC has vision over FINRA. If FINRA has to have their contract terminated, that means somebody didn't do a very good job watching out what FINRA was doing,
Yeah.
and it's
Really.
kind of right. And we know Gensler has been under a lot of scrutiny and attack. And I was going to deal with that. It was another issue I was going to talk about. So there's a lot of discussion about Gensler and his Gary Gensler and his protection of retail investors. And obviously, people in our position with our ticker MMTLP, I believe, uh, they they feel he's not really watched out in the least. And there's movement on Wall Street. I mean, excuse me, in Congress to rearrange how the SEC functions
Right.
and to basically to either remove him or to remove his power. And
Right.
that sounds okay to me. I know the particular congressman who's sponsoring the bill. We've referenced his name in our spaces and discussions. He's a gentleman, and I'm not going to reference his name here.
Right.
He's a gentleman, however, who did not vote in support of protecting us as to short positions. And there's concern, at least I was reading, the concern is even though the idea of perhaps spreading out the power in the
Right.
SEC is good, the bill that is being proposed might split it equally
Right.
so that the result will be a 3-3 tie
And
and
no action.
no action.
Right.
And so even though the premise of the bill might sound good because we all have our concerns about Mr. Gensler,
Right.
maybe this bill and the sponsor may not be acting in our best interests.
Right.
So
Yeah, and any of those types of bills that put a commission in place or a board in place that have the equal number of votes on either side of the aisle, nothing ever gets done. I mean, it just doesn't, because inevitably they're likely going to fall along party lines, and I mean, to your point, though, you basically have inaction right now. So, what's the difference? Whether it's Gary Gensler or three Democrats and three Republicans, the result is still inaction. And, I've thought long and hard about Gensler, and, I can't figure out whether or not he's the bumbling bureaucrat or if he is a puppet or what, or if he's just that out of touch with what's going on underneath his nose. I mean, it's ludicrous to think that you can be the SEC chairman and not see what's happening with these microcap stocks. I mean, all the guy needed to do was be on Jeremy Falmer's space today to hear it. And it boggles the mind. It just boggles the mind that the people that are charged with regulating the market, transparency in the market, and making sure the market functions equally for everyone do none of those things. They strive to do those things, but they are completely missing the mark, and it's disheartening. And often I think it's just downright disgusting that these are the people that are charged with regulating our markets, and they just fail to act.
Yeah. And, and again, this is a topic we've discussed. And so my own theory is, or at least, again, my dream situation would be to have kind of a wall between the regulators and capital markets and the hedge funds, broker dealers, so that if you work on one side, you can't immediately go to the other side.
Right.
And if you work
Yeah.
on the other side, you can't immediately go to the other side. Because I don't
Yeah.
see how, if you're at the SEC and you're looking, and again, I'm just making up names, but if you're at the SEC and you're looking to get a job in compliance at Goldman Sachs, are you going to be super aggressive in scrutinizing the actions of
No,
Goldman?
absolutely not.
Yeah, I mean,
You're job hunting. That's all you're
yeah,
doing. It's no different than that scene in The Big Short where she's at the pool and she sees the folks from Goldman. I mean, that's the bottom line. Now Gensler certainly wouldn't look very well in a bikini, but he's essentially mentally in a bikini by doing what he's doing, right? Yeah. So there needs to be the Chinese firewall between the two, and on some level, shit, I lost my train of thought. Uh, back FINRA. What I was is what I was thinking about. FINRA needs to have a different structure in place. This advisory board from institutions all over the country. These guys should not be sitting on FINRA's advisory board. I'm sorry. They should either be an appointed position by someone on the legislative side or someone on the executive side. But this notion that oh well, I'm the chief executive officer over here at Goldman, so I should be, on the advisory board for FINRA, which, by the way, regulates Goldman. No, that's not the way it works. I mean, that's like me, you know, being a police officer and charged with, monitoring what's going on in my house, but it's my house. So I'm going to do what the hell I want anyways.
right.
So it's just ridiculous.
Yeah. And, you can only believe that it just continues the existing system.
Yeah.
There must be people who are again, my speculation is because I don't know. And it was kind of like you said. So, either, and some of my filings, I put it this way: either it's incompetence or worse,
Yeah. Yeah.
or
It's
both,
just,
or both.
yeah, it does. It boggles the mind. It really does boggle the mind. And it makes you wonder if they just don't care. At the end of the day, they don't care. Gensler's going to serve his 4 or 8 years. He's going to be out and he's going to be sitting in a leather chair in a corner office on the 27th floor overlooking Malibu Bay. I don't know. Maybe that's what his dream retirement is, but it's certainly not to care about Main Street. And let's be honest, Main Street's all of us. Main Street's every one of us. It's me, it's you, it's the fireman, it's the ambulance driver, it's the it's Wall Street Ponzi who served in the military. That's who we're talking about when we're talking about Main Street. We're talking about the country, our citizens, and it just boggles the mind that these institutions make billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars, and they're not held accountable for their crimes. I mean, go. As anyone, we want interesting reading. Go look at the fines that FINRA serves out. $5,000, 484 days of FTDs for X, Y, and Z stock. $2,000. Oh, you misreported that short sale is a long sale, and oh, by the way, 60,000 people lost $20,000 a piece in the market, but that's okay. I mean, why would you not want to commit the crime if that's what you were going to get fined with? Oh, and by the way, no jail time either. You don't have to worry about that. And since it's your institution, it's going to go in your institution's name, so your name won't really be charged. So no one's going to know anyways. Oh, well, it doesn't really matter because no one's going to give a shit. And that's the bottom line. These penalties It's like, oh, here, take the penny out of my pocket. I don't care.
Yeah, so I'm a Tesla bull. It's kind of my side thing. So, and they have a lot of issues, a lot of good stuff, but a lot of issues too. And so something that came up recently was there was a data leak in Europe, and they have a law in Europe that's basically strict liability. So just to describe what that is, that means you're responsible no matter what the reason, no matter what the excuse.
Right.
There was a data breach. So it was a hack by an ex-employee who then fed it to the press, and they just started the investigation. So my premise was, if the fines were commensurate to what they do in Europe, we'd see quick action. So the fines in Europe, they
Oh
can fine
yeah.
you up to 4% of your total sales.
Exactly.
So if you
Exactly.
if somebody finds you, I don't know what Goldman Sachs does per year in revenue, but it's got to be in the billions.
Oh
So
sure.
yeah, so if you take 4% of that, they will change their behavior. I mean,
Yeah.
that's yeah, 200 grand, 2 million grand, 2 million bucks, 20 million bucks, two
Yeah.
hundred million bucks,
Yeah.
peanuts. Really,
Well,
they'll
I've often thought that one way to do it is, there needs to be some type of filing on what what your positions are, how, kind of how you're, if you're some financial broker or financial institution, your risk officer needs to certify those documents. And if there's an error or there's a mistake or you're illegally reporting things, that risk officer needs to be hauled off to prison. I'll guarantee you that risk officer is going to be monitoring everything that goes
right.
on in the institution. It's that simple. Start hauling away a CEO for naked short selling in cuffs. Make them do the damn perp walk. I'll guarantee you that some of these corporations get their asses in line and clean things up. That's part of the problem. Yeah, I mean, the penalties, they're just not stiff enough. But it's like anything, you do it enough, and it's a natural deterrent. Who wants to be hauled away in prison? What multi-billionaire wants to be seen with handcuffs around when they're being, their heads being pushed into the back of a police car?
No,
That happens once or twice, and shit's going to get cleaned up real fast.
that just happens once. All you need is one, one,
Once, right?
one. Yeah, and everybody be running for, scurrying
Yeah.
for dark.
Yeah, and let's flesh that out a little bit. Did you see Roger Hamilton's latest tweet about being silent because and I'm going to paraphrase here. I don't remember it, but basically being silent on the whole naked short sales because he was advised to keep quiet because he could be the target of an investigation. What is wrong with talking about your a company that you own, however many X shares, talking about what you feel is market manipulation on your company?
Yeah, I could see it being a confusing issue. We're not trading, so we could say whatever. But if you're
Right.
trading, you might be moving the market, moving your own stock value. So I can understand why an attorney might tell him to shh,
I
just
agree. I
protect
agree.
yourself.
But
But I
but
really,
isn't that the damnedest thing that these CEOs can't reference their own share price? I mean, Falmer was on a call today for an hour and a half talking about it all. You know, I mean,
yeah,
at some point there needs to be that people need to stand up. And whether you like some of these CEOs or not, they're standing up. Whether you like Roger Hamilton's company, whether you like Jeremy Falmer's company, and you guys know I've been critical of Jeremy Falmer,
right.
but you have to respect him for what he's attempting to do. You have to respect Roger Hamilton, John Bird the same way. I mean, these are folks that are they've just had enough.
Yeah,
They've had enough, and they're going to stand up and start to talk. And the fact that they have to be chilled and silenced because of some unknown threat is ridiculous.
yeah, I agree. I didn't realize you could talk so much. Um, by the way, why shouldn't you trust stairs?
I don't know.
They're always up to something. All right.
I
Um,
think it's better when we just throw it together and go, right?
yes, 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 yes. Okay, so I have one more topic to kind of like fit our time frame because we were kind of doing an hour or less, whatever. By the way,
Yeah, yeah.
I know there's people looking at this, but I haven't seen a comment. I don't know why, but not a single comment.
Did you
whatever.
turn it on? Do you have to? Is there an on switch
Oh,
for it?
maybe there's an on switch. Yes, I prefaced that it was a technological
Yeah, I
mission.
saw that.
Yeah, so just getting us on is enough. Next time we'll get the comments if no. By the way, Frank Nez just posted a email talking about that Goldman Sachs is under investigation. So he's behind us. Maybe he was listening to us and he just put it out. I think that's the answer.
Well, shout out to Frank Ness because he's calling it like he sees it. I have read every article that he's posted. I've never talked to him. I mean, I follow him. I read his tweets, but he got it. He gets it, and he's out there reporting it. And I made the comment, and I make this comment all the time when these asshat journalists come out with these stupid idiots or stupid articles. They're not the Woodward and Bernstein that they think they are. In fact, they're nothing like Woodward and Bernstein. Woodward and Bernstein ask the right questions, and kudos to Frank Ness because he's asking the right questions.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you because the publications that when I was
Mm-hmm.
young, that were like you just took them at face value.
Yeah.
Now they're rags. I mean,
Yeah.
in my opinion, they're rags. I saw like we looked at obviously the recent articles that we saw, Forbes and Wall Street Journal, or those kind of
Yeah.
articles. There was one on Tesla that was last week from the Washington Post. Washington Post used to be the premier newspaper, certainly in the
Yeah.
United States, but maybe in the
Yeah.
world. And this was just a complete hit piece. And if you read it, you could see internally it was inconsistent with the headline. It really
Yeah.
was I was embarrassed for the writer. And it was,
Yeah.
again, somebody just targeting a security with the obvious intention of just trying to knock down the share price. We face that, in all our stocks when trouble arises, we get the BS articles because it helps bring down the price, helps make the shorts make more money. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I think that's it. So the
Yeah.
last topic for today, and maybe when we get some comments lined up next time, we can deal with that. Was briefly to talk about the GTII appeal, and you're kind of more up on that. So can you kind of bring that up?
Oh gosh. Well, let me ask you this. Was there a recent appeal? Because I kind of backed off because of everything that was going on with Mark, and over the weekend I had some things going on. So the last I heard, or the last I had read, was the judge had required those four points to be fleshed out. One of them was, is Finner a state actor? If Finner is a state actor, then what are the ramifications? I'm assuming those have been responded to, and a
Yeah,
decision was
my
made.
understanding was that they lost, and then
Oh, okay.
they appealed and got a stay through I think like June 23rd or something. And
Oh,
the
okay.
appellate judge asked for some briefing on the status. Really wasn't clear what they were asking for briefing on, but asked for briefing, and I think was giving Alpine. Alpine is the party at issue in at least one of the parties at issue with GTII.
Right.
Alpine apparently has a checkered past, and they're about to perhaps lose their ability to do business. So
Yeah.
there's a bunch of litigation that's pending, and if Alpine is unable to function in the future, I think GTII holders believe there will be positive price action because Alpine's position will have to be closed.
Right.
Okay, so
Yeah. I just didn't know that they lost and appealed. I didn't know
well,
that piece of it.
yeah, no, they're on appeal in the federal court, and there's a hearing or again briefing on the 23rd. Seemed
Right.
like to me that the judge or judges were just giving Alpine one more chance just to make a
Yeah.
record,
Yeah.
and it was interesting because the stay was only effective. They called it a temporary stay. So at
Right.
some point in time, the suggestion is that the stay will removed. And right, Alpine's also because you know this better, much better than I think. Even though they're in that group, there's a big JR, right?
Yes.
But we don't
No
know.
relation.
Yeah, but we don't know if big JR is bigger than little JR, which is a concern.
I have no idea. I talked to him. He sounds bigger than me, but hey,
Uh,
I don't know. He's a good
I'm
guy, though. We know that.
I'm concerned about that size difference, but why don't you tell me a little bit about what you know about the naked shorting in that particular stock? Because it's the same. It's not any different. Well, it's slightly different, obviously, than MMTLP because
Right.
our situation is unique. But naked shorting obviously is an issue. So
Yeah. So my understanding is well, so it's I think it stems back to the original enforcement action against not well this not the original. I apologize. The second enforcement action against Alpine, and that action against Alpine basically was you overcharged your customers nor and you didn't pay the DTCC fees correctly, and that's what that was, that second enforcement action, the one that they ruled that you're out, Alpine, and you have a $2 million fine. Now that enforcement action is on appeal. My understanding is at some point in that process or somewhere along there, DTCC and I think the NSCC also has an action against Alpine. And somehow DTCC basically put it out, look, Alpine's got a concentrated short position in GTII. We know that. I mean, Ham posts it pretty much every other day. As far as naked shorts, I'm sure there's naked shorts in it. What's the number? I have no idea. I couldn't even begin to speculate. I know Ham puts a number out there. I don't know. I know what the facts are telling. I know what the facts are saying, and that's that Alpine's basically on its last leg, and they have a concentrated short position in GTII per the DTCC.
yeah, so it seems like the end is near for them. And again, we talk about the regulators doing their job, but if
Right.
the bad actors lose their positions in companies and money, and they have to spend money, that's going to be a really big positive factor also. And
Yeah.
part
Go
of the
ahead.
problem we've experienced, and I don't know, listen, we go back to the MMTLP story. We know that there was market makers that let it MMTLP trade September, October 2021. We know that those market makers really haven't suffered, if it's true, and that they committed wrongful acts. I'm just being very generous, by the way, with my
Right.
language.
Right.
If they did something wrongfully, there's been no ramifications for them at this point in time.
Right.
And if they acted improperly, intentionally, and harmed investors, they should suffer the consequence. And if the consequence is they go out of business, then so
So be
be it.
it.
So
So
be
be
it.
it.
We want the bad actors out of business. And listen,
Yeah.
shouldn't the SEC and FINRA want all the bad actors out of business? Wouldn't it make
Right.
their life easier? Wouldn't it make it
Right.
easier to regulate the system?
Right. Well, we have this notion of too big to fail, and that goes back to 2008 and the financial crisis. But we also have this notion of capitalistic markets, where if you're a business and you've got a good product and you sell that good product, you should be you're making more money and you can grow your business and be successful and hire Americans, right? But Wall Street doesn't work that way. Wall Street works the way of no, no, no. We're gonna take all the money. We're gonna take all the money. We're gonna get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. We're gonna screw up the economy. We're gonna screw up our markets because we're gonna engage in all this bad behavior because we want your money. But then we've become too big to fail. So now the regulators have to protect us because, well, if we fail, Wall Street's going to, or Main Street's going to suffer. So this notion of too big to fail is really to protect Main Street, right? I mean, that's what they say. We're protecting Main Street by propping up these institutions because if they failed, Main Street would be, would be devastated.
Right.
And okay, I can kind of buy that, but there's a lot of Americans that are willing to go through that pain to clean this shit up because the bottom line is they're getting robbed anyways. I mean, let's be honest, they're getting robbed. They're getting robbed every day by Wall Street institutions, and this article is just step one. Whether Gary Gensler and the SEC has the courage to do what they're supposed to be doing, which is their jobs, by the way, has yet to be seen. But if they start doing their jobs and start cleaning some of this shit up, it might not be so bad. Main Street might not be so affected by an institution that we thought was too big to fail. Name one, I don't care, but it goes under.
And there's been at least when we hear it, there's been a lack of confidence in the markets, and it's continuing. And again, we're in a different time. So,
Right.
25 years ago, no internet, and people would find out scattered, whatever. Nowadays, everybody knows.
Right.
And the markets should be concerned about the public's lack of confidence in the market.
Yeah, they should
Really
be.
good.
Yeah, but our regulators are more concerned with making sure ABC hedge fund stays in business. If you go back to COVID and '08 when they propped up the automakers during COVID, they propped up the airlines. Automakers and airlines are absolutely essential to the economy. If the three major airlines go out of business, commerce is going to come to a halt. People might not realize that, but commerce is coming to a halt, and it's going to hurt. If we lose three of the largest hedge funds, do you think everybody's going to give a shit? Do you think the economy is going to stop because we lose three of the largest hedge funds? No, it's not. Yeah, sure, there might be 30 or 40 billionaires that are, flat broke and they can't get on their yacht and go up to Nantucket for the weekend. No one cares. No one cares. What do they employ? 1,000 people that'll go anywhere in the world and get another job in finance. And that's the sad part about this, is that these organizations are allowed to survive because they've become essential to our economy. They're not.
Yeah, the too big to fail philosophy.
Yes.
And obviously Goldman, not that they've done anything wrong, but Goldman might be considered that, like JP Morgan, who bought First Republic Bank when they were stumbling.
Yeah.
Those companies, they get sweet deals too. They may provide a great service, great liquidity. That's possible too. I'll give them credit, but they get sweet deals on the backside, and it's usually unfortunately, it's on our dime.
Oh, it
Usually,
absolutely is.
we're
It's
usually
always
paying.
on our dime. It's
Yeah.
always on the taxpayers and Main Street's dime.
Okay.
So
So we were going to go for an hour. We're about at that point in time. We
yeah.
we'll continue this next week. I would like my thinking was maybe after the next set of news comes out, we can
Yeah.
come back, discuss that and other issues. And again, we're going to make this a regular thing unless everybody hates it. If everybody hates it, then please let us know. Please. If anybody has any good jokes, please let us know, please.
Yeah. All right. Well, Richard, thanks for having me. Again, good news with NextBridge. Let's all take a breath and be patient. And again, with Mark's petition, it's just step one.
Yes,
So
step one, and we're just going to keep on chugging away. I know we're doing that, and I know lots of other people are doing it. I know
yeah.
it's difficult, but we're going to keep it up.
Yep.
Take
All right,
care.
Richard. Talk to you soon.
Take care. Have a good night.
Yep. Bye.